When you begin the process of working on yourself, the first and most difficult truth you must accept is that no one is coming to rescue you. Your life is, for better or worse, in your hands. This is not a comfortable realization because it strips away the luxury of blaming other people, the economy, your upbringing, or even bad luck for the way things are. Responsibility feels heavy because it means you are the author of your own story. But the weight of responsibility is paradoxically what gives you strength. It transforms you from a passive observer of life into an active participant, someone who shapes the narrative rather than simply being carried along by it. When you refuse to take responsibility, you give away your power. You tell yourself, I can't change because this happened to me. Be better off if only that person hadn't done what they did. It's seductive to think that way because it absolves you of effort. You don't have to do anything, is it? If the problem isn't entirely external, but it also guarantees that nothing will change. You can't control the past. You can't rewrite what someone else did. The only thing you can ever truly control is yourself, your decisions, your mindset, and your actions from this moment forward. And here's where it gets interesting. Taking responsibility doesn't mean taking blame. This is a point people often confuse. Blame is about finding fault. Responsibility is about finding power. You can acknowledge that bad things happened to you that were beyond your control, but if you stay in that acknowledgement without moving toward ownership, you remain stuck. Responsibility says, yes, this is what happened, and now I will decide how to respond to it. Think about this. Two people can face the exact same setback, losing a job, experiencing heartbreak, failing at a project, and end up in completely different places a year later. One spirals into bitterness and stagnation. The other uses the experience as fuel to rebuild stronger. The difference is not in the circumstances, but in the decision to own their future. Taking radical responsibility means you stop waiting for perfect conditions before you act. Too many people postpone improvement until the stars align. They tell themselves they'll start working on their health when they have more free time, or they'll begin saving money once they're earning more. The truth is, conditions are rarely ideal. You work with what you have right now, however imperfect it is, because the act of working on yourself creates better conditions in the future. There's also a moral dimension here. When you take responsibility for your life, you become someone other people can depend on. You stop being a burden and start being a source of stability. This is not just about self-interest, about the kind of person you're becoming. A responsible person can build relationships, lead teams, raise families, and contribute to their community in ways that someone who is constantly making excuses simply cannot. I understand responsibility is not glamorous. It doesn't give you the instant gratification that complaining or blaming others does. It's work. It's showing up when you don't feel like it, doing the thing that makes you uncomfortable, and admitting when you're wrong. But over time, the compound effect of these small acts of ownership is enormous. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to trust yourself, and that self-trust is the foundation of real confidence. If you've ever wondered why some people seem unshakable in the face of adversity, it's often because they've lived this principle. They know that even when everything falls apart, they still have control over how they think, how they act, and what they aim for next. That's an extraordinary kind of freedom that isn't dependent on anyone else's approval or permission. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp, wrote that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That is responsibility in its purest form. You may not control the external world, but you always control your internal world. And when you take ownership of that, you start to reshape the external as well. Of course, this doesn't mean you become rigid or refuse help from others. Radical responsibility actually makes you more collaborative because you're no longer operating from a place of helplessness. You can accept help without being dependent on it. You can work with others without expecting them to solve your life for you. That's the difference between interdependence, which is healthy, and dependency, which is not. So the starting point for working on yourself is this: wherever you are right now, own it fully. Your successes, your failures, your habits, your mindset, these are yours. Don't hide from them. Don't wait for someone else to fix them. Accept them, and then decide to improve them. Once you embrace that truth, every obstacle becomes an opportunity. Every setback becomes a lesson. And every day becomes a chance to write a better chapter in your story. Because in the end, responsibility is not a burden. It's the ultimate form of freedom. When you take full ownership of your life, you no longer have to wait for permission to become who you were meant to be. You can start right now. And if you don't, remember this: no one else will do it for you. If you want to change, if you truly want to grow, you have to stop protecting yourself from the very things that will make you stronger. Comfort feels safe, but it's a trap. It quietly keeps you the same. Growth almost always hides behind discomfort, behind the fears you'd rather not confront. and behind the weaknesses you've been avoiding for years. The human mind is remarkably skilled at avoidance. We convince ourselves that certain problems work themselves out, or we downplay our shortcomings so we don't have to deal with them. But the truth is, what you ignore doesn't disappear. It compounds. A small crack in your character, your discipline, or your mindset doesn't stay small. Left unaddressed, it widens over time until it becomes a gap too large to ignore, often at the worst possible moment. Think about the areas in your life you've been avoiding. Maybe it's the weakest. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been postponing because it will be uncomfortable. Maybe it's the reality that you're not as disciplined, skilled, or emotionally balanced as you could be. Or maybe it's a personal weakness, anger, laziness, insecurity that you've allowed to live unchecked because facing it feels overwhelming. Each time you avoid those challenges, you trade long-term growth for short-term relief. And that trade is always a bad deal. The paradox is that the very act of facing what scares you is what makes you capable of overcoming it. You don't become courageous by avoiding fear. You become courageous by walking straight into it, shaking hands with it, and realizing you can survive it. When you lean into discomfort, you send a powerful message to yourself. I can handle this. And every time you do that, your threshold for what you can handle expands. Weakness is a strange thing. We think hiding it keeps us safe, but in reality, hiding it makes us vulnerable. If there's a crack in the foundation of a house, covering it with paint doesn't make the house stronger. It only makes the problem invisible until the whole thing starts to crumble. The same is true with our personal flaws. You can cover them with charm, excuses, or distractions, but eventually life has a way of testing your character. And if you haven't strengthened the weak spots, they will give way under pressure. Now, facing discomfort isn't about being reckless or masochistic. It's not about throwing yourself in chaos for the sake of chaos. It's about intentionally pure self in situations that stretch you, where you're forced to adapt, learn, and become more resilient. Yes. This can be as simple as having the uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding, taking on a responsibility that feels just slightly beyond your current ability, or developing a habit you know you need but have resisted, like disciplined time management or physical training. One of the best ways to grow is to deliberately seek controlled discomfort. This is why physical training, for example, is such a powerful teacher. Lifting weights, running long distances, or pushing your body in any capacity forces you to confront the voice in your head that says, "Stop, this is too much." And when you ignore that voice, when you push through, you learn that your limits were further out than you thought. That lesson doesn't stay usually in the gym. It follows you into every area of your life. But here's the part people often miss. Growth through discomfort is not a one-time act. It's a lifestyle. You can't just face one big fear and then check personal growth off your list. You have to consistently push yourself into the edges of your capacity. This is how you stay sharp. This is how you keep expanding instead of shrinking into the safety of the familiar. There's also a deeper psychological reason for this. When you confront your weaknesses, you integrate parts of yourself that you've been ignoring. Carl Jung called this shadow work, the process of bringing the hidden, often uncomfortable aspects of yourself into the light. When you face those parts head on, you stop being controlled by them. Instead of your fears and insecurities operating in the background, subtly shaping your decisions, you gain conscious control over them. The alternative is dangerous. If you never confront your weaknesses, you live in a fragile state. You might appear strong, but the wrong challenge at the wrong time can break you. Life is unpredictable. You don't get to choose when the test comes. All you can do is prepare yourself so that when it does come, you're ready. You're ready, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. This is why discomfort is a gift. It gives you the opportunity to rehearse resilience before life demands it of you. It teaches you to be adaptable, to hold steady when things get messy, and to move forward even when uncertainty looms. Those are the exact qualities that separate people who crumble under pressure from those who rise. The irony is that the more you face discomfort, the more comfortable you become with being uncomfortable. You stop seeing challenges, the threats, and start seeing them as invitations to grow. And that shift changes everything. It makes you proactive instead of reactive, courageous instead of timid, and focused instead of distracted. So, if you want to work on yourself in a real, lasting way, don't just polish the parts of yourself that already shine. Go after the parts you'd rather hide. Step into the conversations that make your palms sweat. Volunteer for the tasks that feel intimidating. Challenge yourself in ways that make you question whether you can handle it, because that's how you find out that you can. In the end, the person you want to become is always standing behind a door marked discomfort. Most people stand outside that door, waiting for the courage to open it. But courage doesn't come because you open it. It comes because you open it. And when you walk through, you'll discover the life you've been waiting for is on the other side. Purpose is what gives your life structure. Discipline is what keeps it standing. Without purpose, you can drift for years, busy, but not truly moving forward. Without discipline, even the clearest purpose collapses under the weight of distraction, temptation, and inconsistency. These two forces, purpose and discipline, are not optional if you're serious about working on yourself. Theo, we ecist. They are the scaffolding allows you to build a life worth living. Purpose begins with asking yourself a question that most people avoid. What am I here for? Not in the vague, abstract way that gets thrown around in motivational quotes, but in a deeply personal, almost uncomfortable way. What is it that, if you devoted yourself to it, would make your life feel meaningful? Purpose is not always glamorous. Sometimes it's not even clear at first. But without it, you're just moving from one task to another, 1 year to the next, reacting instead of directing. You see this everywhere. People who have potential, who have talent, but who lack a central aim, they chase trends, hop from job to job, dabble in one project after another, always searching for something that will give them the sense of fulfillment been missing. But fulfillment doesn't come from novelty, the weakest. It comes from committing yourself to something that matters, even when it's hard. Once you identify that aim, discipline becomes the bridge between wanting and having. And here's the thing about discipline. It's not about punishing yourself, living a joyless life. It's about building a set of habits and systems that keep you aligned with your purpose, even on the days when you feel uninspired or discouraged, because there will be days like that, many of them. Purpose can motivate you in the short term, but in the long term, discipline is the workhorse that carries you forward. Most people overestimate the power of motivation and underestimate the power of consistency. Motivation comes in bursts. It's like a spark. But discipline is like an engine. It doesn't burn as brightly, but it keeps running day after day, mile after mile, regardless of the weather. That's what creates real change, not one massive effort, but small, repeated acts of alignment with your purpose. And here's something few people admit. Discipline frees you. At first glance, it sounds like the opposite. Rules, routines, restrictions. But when you have discipline, you eliminate the constant internal negotiation whether you'll do the thing you know you should do. You just do it. You take the decision, making out of the mo and put it into the structure you've already committed, is already committed to. That reduces mental friction and frees up energy for deeper, more creative thinking. There's also a moral and psychological weight to living with purpose and discipline. When you're clear about your aim and you show up for it consistently, you build self-respect. Weakest, you stop seeing yourself as someone who makes promises they don't keep. That changes the way you carry yourself. You walk into situations knowing that you can rely on yourself, and that confidence radiates outward. Other people notice it. Opportunities gravitate toward it. But let's be honest, purpose and discipline aren't static. You don't just find them once and then coast for the rest of your life. You have to protect them. You have to renew your sense of purpose regularly, because life changes, and so do you. And you have to adapt your discipline as circumstances shift, without letting yourself slide into complacency. Purpose can evolve, discipline can be recalibrated, but both must remain active forces in your life. There's another trap here: mistaking business for discipline. You can be busy all day and still be undisciplined if what you're doing isn't aligned with your purpose. Discipline isn't just about working hard. It's about working intentionally. It's choosing to say no to the things that don't serve your aim, even if they're easier or more enjoyable in the moment. That's where most people fail. They're disciplined when it's convenient. Real discipline shows up when it's not. And purpose, real purpose, will demand discipline that stretches you. It will ask you to sacrifice comfort, to delay gratification, to stay the course when the results aren't visible yet. It will test your patience and your resolve. But the reward is not just in achieving the goal. It's in becoming the kind of person who can. That's the quiet, enduring victory of discipline. It transforms you on the way to your destination. When you live this way, something powerful happens. Your days start to align. You stop feeling like you're constantly chasing something undefined. You can look at your life and see a direction, a trajectory that makes sense. That doesn't mean it's perfect. It never will be. But it means you're moving with intention instead of drifting. And over time, that creates a sense of peace that aimlessness can never provide. If you've ever wondered why some people seem unstoppable, it's often because they've married a strong purpose with relentless discipline that waste it. They don't waste energy deciding whether to keep going. They've already decided. And that decision, made once and honored daily, becomes the force that shapes their future. So, if you want to work on yourself in a way that truly lasts, you need more than inspiration. You need more than fleeting motivation. You need a purpose that's worth the struggle, and the discipline to meet that struggle head on every single day. Without one, the other collapses. Together, they create a foundation that can hold the weight of your ambitions. In the end, purpose answers why you move forward. Discipline answers how. Without both, you'll stop. With both, you'll not only move forward, you'll keep moving until you've built something that lasts. And that's when you'll realize the truth. The most meaningful life is not found, it is built.